Welcome, everyone. We are here with Ken Seneff from Lean Rocket Lab, and we are so happy to have you today.
Thanks, and good job on getting the name right. Usually people butcher that, so well done.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we're actually just going to jump right into it. I'd love to know more about your kind of undergraduate background and how you got into what you're doing.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So undergraduate background, I'll start there. I grew up in a little place called Idaho, if anybody's ever heard of that. And I went to Idaho State University, and actually didn't study business or economics or entrepreneurship or anything even close. I studied pharmacy, and I really liked chemistry, and that was kind of my thing. And got into pharmacy school, and sort of realized that I didn't really want to do that for my career, even though I liked chemistry. And I realized that I liked sales and marketing a lot better. So I ended up actually dropping out of college before I finished and started my entrepreneurial journey and career. It's been a pretty crazy adventure ever since.
Very cool.
So that's not me advocating you dropping out for you students. Stay in school, it's good. No, stay in, it's good. But the point is, entrepreneurship isn't necessarily just something you can learn in school. It's a good thing to learn in school, but it's real life application, and anyone can be an entrepreneur. So even me, chemistry, pharmacy guy, can transition and become an entrepreneur. So I do wish now though I had learned a lot more in college about entrepreneurship. So make sure you pay attention and get good grades.
Gotcha. So you are what we call a serial entrepreneur. You have been a part of and created many companies. Would you like to talk about those for a bit?
Sure. So yeah, serial entrepreneur. I used to think that meant you ate a lot of cereal, believe it or not. So no, serial entrepreneurs, I think most entrepreneurs actually are serial entrepreneurs. In fact, I don't know anyone that is an entrepreneur that's not a serial entrepreneur. Really, it just means that you have started and been a part of multiple companies. And that's true for me. Early days of entrepreneurship, so back in college where I kind of learned that I was an entrepreneur or was getting that sense anyway. In pharmacy school, I was never one of those people you consider smart, book smart. So I always had to work really hard to get good grades in school. And so I went to Idaho State, which is not as big as Michigan State, but big classes, right? Several hundred students in the class. And what I would do is I would find really smart people that just were smarter than me, and I would form study groups with them. And I learned how I realized I learned from other people, right? And so what I would do is during midterms and finals, I would make study guides for my really hard classes. And this was like kind of pre-internet, or like right on the time the internet was becoming a thing. And so my study guides started getting a reputation, started getting quite popular. And so I would literally sit outside my classes for midterms and finals and sell my study guide. And that's how I got party money in college. It's kind of fun. So
That's so smart. I think I might do that. No, I'm kidding.
It's a little different nowadays with the internet, but anyway, so like growing up, I always did stuff like that, found like ways to make money. And that's really all entrepreneurship is. You're finding a little sort of crack in the market and exploring that and figuring out how to make money doing so, right? So kind of my whole life, that's what I did. And I just didn't really even realize that meant I was an entrepreneur, right? And then kind of started my career. Actually, my first company that I was a part of starting anyway, we sold outdoor boilers. Sounds very exciting, right? So how some people heat their house is they put this big boiler unit in their backyard, okay, and you put wood in it, and then the fire heats up water, and then the water pumps your house. It's sort of an alternative to propane energy, and did that back in 2008, right when we had that big gas crisis, when gas went from like $2 a gallon to like $4 a gallon within a few months. And so everybody was scrambling to replace their propane tanks because it was super expensive to heat their house that way. So anyway, we hit the market at the right time. We launched this company, and I had learned a lot about internet marketing, how to do SEO and SEM, and just went crazy on Google ads and bought a bunch of ads and sold a bunch of boilers. We did about 2 million in sales in our first quarter in business. And I thought I was a brilliant business person. It was my first company. And that ended very poorly. What ended up happening was we ended up getting sued by the manufacturer. So we were a distributor of this product and the manufacturer sued us. We obviously grew very fast and they grew with us. And when you're in the midst of a very high velocity of growth, a lot of chaos ensues, if you don't do it right. And that's what happened. And so they basically thought that we were not fulfilling the terms of our contract, which we were. They just didn't have very good records. And so long story short, that ended up getting thrown out, but that ended our relationship. And so I went from having, a very high cash flowing business and living what I thought was the dream to nothing overnight. And I was unemployed. So that was my first taste of entrepreneurship. And since then, I've done a lot with internet marketing, launched a internet marketing company that spun into a marketing software company. And nowadays I run a startup incubator and accelerator, and I assist entrepreneurs that are doing manufacturing and high-tech stuff. So anyway, that's a really fast answer to your question there. I could go on, but.
Yeah, very cool. So let's talk about your incubator now. So this is Lean Rocket Lab.
Mm-hmm.
You guys focus on the lean startup method, correct?
Correct.
Would you like to kind of explain what that is for everyone?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So the lean startup methodology is actually something that's been made sort of popular, I guess, over the last, call it decade or so. And really the idea of lean startup is that you're simply iterating faster. So there's a few ways to develop your product in your company. And one way is called waterfall. We call it waterfall. Basically where you have this idea for a product, whether it's physical or digital, and you build it, you perfect it, you make everything about it perfect, and then you release it to the market. And at the end, you might get lucky and get it right the first time, and the market loves it and you're successful. Chances are, though, that you're going to learn some things once you release your product to the marketplace, and you're going to need to make changes, tweaks, etc. And so lean startup essentially is you're doing that. You're releasing product or whatever your service or your product is faster to the marketplace. You're getting feedback and you're iterating. It's a constant iteration cycle. And if you follow the lean startup methodology, it'll save you a ton of time, a ton of money, and you're going to fail faster and fail quicker in different aspects. And we talk about failure real fast. Failure's good when it comes to developing a product, etc. Because the faster you can get to like a failure point, the faster you can learn from that and pivot. And what happens to a lot of startups is they don't release fast enough, and they invest way too much in getting a product developed and out to the market and then learn. But now they're out of time and they're out of money. And so I hate to see startups fail that way, because there's a better way to do it. And so I through the lean startup methodology, I coach entrepreneurs on how to do that. And we actually use a really great tool called the Lean Canvas. And the Lean Canvas is like it's got 9 boxes on it. It's really just a 1-page business plan. So you take your idea and you kind of map through the Lean Canvas. And as part of that process, what's going to happen is you're going to figure out what the riskiest assumptions are in your business model. And then we simply say, okay, what's the riskiest part of this business model? Let's go test that. So let's say that the riskiest part might be that, or the riskiest assumption, I should say, is that your product or idea is better than the competition, the incumbent competition. So let's go test it. How do we do that? And and so then you come up with a test experiment, go run it, see what you learned, and then go do it again. And that's a great way to develop a business versus, again, making all your assumptions about the market, about the product, etc. Building this perfect solution and then learning is just a recipe for, losing a lot of money. Actually, and I've got a story about that. I did that once in one of my companies. We were building a piece of software, a piece of marketing software. And what we did is we planned out this whole software, like every feature of it, all of the interfaces, did the UI, the UX, built this whole platform, spent many months, lots of hundreds of thousands of making this thing, and then released it to the market, and then started learning and, learning, oh, our users, oh, they don't care about that feature that we spent like months making. They really just want this, or that's too complicated the way we did it. We need to like learn and do this. And if we had just released it sooner and iterated faster in the process, then we would have saved a lot of time, a lot of money. And so anyway, that's a long answer, but that's encompasses Lean Startup methodology.
Yeah, so I actually have a question. So can you explain further how the traditional business model is different from the lean canvas model? It's just kind of like more rapid, would you say?
Yeah, so I'm sure in your studies at some point you're going to be working on a business plan, right? As an in entrepreneur school. So business plans are great, but here's what happens to a lot of times with a business plan. It ends up being like this big document, right? Like a 50-page document of your plan, your strategy, all this stuff. Which is what I will say. There is value in a business plan, in not the plan itself, okay, but more in the process that you're going to go through to create that plan. And the Lean Canvas just helps you accelerate that process. So there's 9 boxes on the Lean Canvas. So the first 3 boxes are, what's the problem, what's the solution, and what's your value proposition, okay? And in my opinion, the value proposition is the most important box to get right. What happens to a lot of entrepreneurs is they get so focused on their solution, okay? So, entrepreneurs see a problem in the world, right? And then come up with a novel solution to solve that. And most entrepreneurs get really kind of passionate, if you will, about that solution. Oh, I made this widget that does this thing and it has this feature, and I've literally seen entrepreneurs spend years developing their solution, and then not really applying that same level of passion to their value proposition. And a value proposition is simply what's in it for the customer, right? You're solving the problem with the solution, and what's the benefit that they're going to get, and are they going to pay you for that solution? You might have the world's coolest solution, but if nobody's going to pay you for it, then you don't have a business, right? And so the Lean Canvas just helps you think through that stuff quicker, and you can head fake yourself a lot with a business plan, where you're like, okay, if I sell it for X dollars, and then I sell so many of them over time, here's what my projection is going to be. So, we're going to be worth $10 million in a year from now. Well, that's kind of fun to think about and do in a business plan, but it's kind of pointless, right? Because at some point you have to have somebody tell you, yes, I want to buy that, and pay real money for it.
Yeah. So as a coach at Lean Rocket Lab, what's kind of your role? How do you assist startups?
Yeah, so startups come through our doors in all kinds of ways, either through our front door here at the building, or they call us, hit us on social, apply for one of our programs through the network. Anyway, we do an onboarding. So, we'll sit down and do an assessment with an entrepreneur, see where they're at, what's going on. And then if we accept that entrepreneur and that startup into our program, what we do is we use a tool called Lean Stack. Okay. And actually, this is a great resource for anybody watching. Leanstack.com is a site that was developed by a guy named Ash Maira, and he is the guy who invented the Lean Canvas. And the Lean Canvas is simply an adaptation of a more well-known model called the Business Model Canvas. And on this Lean Stack platform, we are a Lean Stack accelerator here. You'll go in, and there's actually digital tools to create your Lean Canvas. And then I'm a coach on there, so I do monthly check-ins with all of our startups and help them analyze their canvases and determine what we need to do next. It might be, do we need to run an experiment, a test? There's certainly going to be obstacles along the way to developing a product. And so my job is to help introduce resources to help knock down those obstacles, and then help get them introduced to either individuals or companies that can help them take that next step in their startup. So
very cool. So we were kind of talking about when we had our preliminary talk, you're based in Jackson, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's kind of like a big manufacturing area, sort of.
That's right. Yep.
So do you help your startups like really create their product from like ideation to a tangible product?
Yep, for sure. So
Very cool.
yeah, that's a good point. Down here in Jackson, a lot of people don't know this, but we actually have one of the most diverse manufacturing economies of any place. We have over 300 different manufacturers here in Jackson, and we make
Wow.
all kinds of crazy stuff here. You know, some stuff you probably see and don't even know it comes from Jackson, but like, you know, McDonald's, that the little drink dispenser thing and the cup moves automatically, right, at the drive-through.
Yeah.
Those are made in Jackson, and all the way to like parts for like the Boeing 747 to all the automotive, you know, all kinds of stuff gets made here, from metals to plastics
Wow.
to microchips, kind of everything. And so because of that, what's really neat is we're very well connected with the manufacturing community, and we're able to get entrepreneurs connected with the right manufacturing partner. When you're making a physical product, we call it the commercialization gap. Commercialization gap is way bigger, because let's say you're starting a service company or a software company. In order for you to go from idea to something that can be sold, it's easier. It's just a matter of writing code or developing the right, you know, model for your service. But if you're selling a physical product, you have to actually have the thing made, right? Which can be very expensive and time consuming. And so our whole thing here is to help get connected to the right manufacturing partner faster. And so what that looks like is an entrepreneur might walk in our front door and say, okay, I've got this idea for this product. And we're going to start by helping them understand the business model. A lot of people want to, you know, run forward and just start making something, which is fine. But, you know, if there's not a good business model to support that, then, you know, sort of what's the point again, right? And I always tell people, with your business model, if it doesn't work on paper, it's not going to work in real life. Okay. But just because it works on paper doesn't mean it will work in real life. But we go through that. We call it the emotional heavy lifting of like, let's get the business model worked out here. So here's the product. Here's what we're going to sell it for. Does the market want this, need it, etc. But then when it comes time to actually making the product, we have a lot of partnerships. One of our partnerships is with a company called Alro Steel, which is one of the largest companies in Michigan, actually, and one of the largest steel and plastic suppliers in the Midwest. And they donate any metal or plastic materials needed to make a prototype. And then we have partnerships with engineering firms. In fact, we have a partnership with Michigan State's engineering school. So we can, for specific kind of products, we can get, you know, engineering support on that, design, etc. We have oh, I gotta be on me. That's weird. We have professional service network companies that are industrial designers, and then yeah, and then of course when it comes time to manufacture, depending on what the manufacturing method is, it might be machining, it might be injection molding, electronics, etc. Then we'll get connected with the right partner. And so our goal is to help an entrepreneur go from ideation to alpha prototype without having to get investment or debt or anything to make that happen.
So essentially, someone can like knock on your door with just an idea and you'd help them develop it all the way through. Wow, that's very cool. So once a client of yours or a startup reaches that I have my product phase, where do you go from there? Do you help them get like investors and things like that?
Yep. So we help entrepreneurs in three main categories: physical products, manufacturing innovations, and advanced materials. Okay. And so, as you can imagine, the commercialization cycle is different for each one of those. And what's really neat is we're actually part of what's called the NEC Smart Zone Incubator Network. Okay. So Michigan actually has one of the strongest entrepreneurial support networks in the country. And the state of Michigan, through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, realized that very thing, that for early stage entrepreneurs, it's really difficult to get funding for your idea, okay? Because if you go talk to an investor, they're going to say, you know, you're not far enough along for me to invest in this yet. And if they do invest, they want to take a bunch of equity, right? So a lot of things don't get made that could get made or should get made because it's just too hard to get early stage capital, right? So the state of Michigan realized that, and they put together this sort of network of funds. And so depending on how high tech the idea is, how disruptive it is, there's programs where we can get entrepreneurs up to $50,000 of what we call non-diluted money, grant money, through this program. It's called the Business Accelerator Fund, and that is to help you develop your product, marketing, legal fees. It's to give you services to help make your startup happen. Okay. And then we have our own fund. We call it our validation fund. You can get up to $10,000 from us. And you have to pitch to our committee to help you prototype your product. And then there are federal programs, things like SBIR and STTR, which if you go to Michigan State, you guys have a thick program up there through your startup side. They have great connection to SBIR and STTR. Those are both federal, federally assisted research grant programs. If you're building something really high tech, it's going to take a long time to develop. Some of the startups in our ecosystem have raised several $1 millions through this program, and it's all grant money. And there's a lot of nuances to that. So they don't just hand that money out, obviously, but that is an opportunity. And then once you're kind of past all the prototyping stuff and your first goal is to get traction. Investors care about traction more than they care about anything, right? And traction means does the market want this? And are you selling it? And not only are you selling it, but is the rate at which you're selling it accelerating? And are people sort of clamoring to get what you're selling, whatever that is? And if you hit that point, getting investment is never going to be the hard thing. Okay. There's lots of investors ready to go. And in Michigan, we actually also have a very good investor network. We've got great angel investor groups that will invest early stage, we call that pre-seed. And there's some great resources there all the way through sort of a Series B and beyond capital. So we've got angel groups, investment groups, VC funds, et cetera, all here in Michigan. And whether you work with the Lean Rocket Lab as a Smart Zone incubator or any of the Smart Zone incubators, they can help you get connected with all those resources. In Lansing, there's actually some great groups. A group called LEAP up there in Lansing is part of the MEDC Smart Zone Incubator Network. And they can help you, we can help you, we all collaborate. Certainly the folks over at Red Cedar Ventures have a lot going on, and all of the Michigan State University entrepreneurship support programs are fantastic. Last thing on that, so the state of Michigan has those early stage sort of grant funds, right? Mm-hmm. But then they also have some seed and like when you're raising, call it $500,000 or more, there's a couple of funds that the state of Michigan administers in partnership with Invest Detroit and with Red Cedar Ventures, actually. It's called Michigan Rise, and you can get investment through that fund. It's called there's one called the First Capital Fund. It's designed for emerging startups to get their first investor. And then Michigan Rise is in that same zone as well. So the takeaway for if you're watching this is there's a lot of resources. In fact, I would say that there's more resources than there are great startups. So if you've got a great startup and you're a great entrepreneur, then there's a lot to help you.
Michigan seems like the place to be right now.
It is. Yeah, there's so much going on.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. So we actually have a question. One of our attendees wants to know, what's in it as a startup coach? Do you get some sort of equity / royalty?
Good question. Yeah, I get asked that question a lot. There's multiple answers to that. First, the Lean Rocket Lab is a nonprofit. And so our whole mission and charge is to help entrepreneurs. So if a local entrepreneur walks in our front door, we don't charge, we don't take equity. We're here to help them. And that's part of we do get grants, we do get funded through the MEDC to do that. So I get paid that way. But then we also have a couple of other programs. We have our growth stage accelerator. Okay, in our growth stage accelerator, these are startups that are kind of beyond their commercialization and they're ready to start growing. We do charge a little bit for our accelerator, and we do have a success fee. So as we're able to help them be successful, then we expect a return on that. But then we also manage our own fund. We have an investment fund, and we make $110,000 investments in Industry 4.0 startups. And we do participate in the gains on that fund as well. So there's multiple ways that we get paid, but for early stage local startups, we don't charge.
Cool. So even for like, I know you said the plastic and metal is donated when you make a prototype. Is that also free of charge?
Yep. So
wow, that's cool.
Our goal again is to help an entrepreneur go from idea to commercializable product without having to go raise a bunch of capital or get debt to do so. Yeah. That said, I don't want to misrepresent. I mean, there are certainly times where the resources we have aren't enough to get to do that, and that you know the founders, et cetera, will need to figure out how to fund it.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't want everybody to think that they can just come in here and get a product made for free. We're going to certainly try to help them as much as we can and introduce as many resources as possible. Yeah, it's not.
The resources you've mentioned, more than I ever knew Michigan had. So
pretty cool.
That's awesome. So actually oh yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, candidly, I wish I would have known all of this in my startups. You know, like now that we run this incubator, I've learned about all these amazing resources, and some of them would have really helped me if I had known about them. So that's part of our job, is to tell people, hey, there's like a lot here for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for introducing them to us. I'm excited to look into them. So actually my last question for you is, do you have any resources, books, movies, shows, podcasts, or anything you'd recommend for young entrepreneurs to get inspired and get moving?
For sure. Yeah. I got to tell you, I think my favorite book to recommend to early stage founders and future entrepreneurs is a book called The Mom Test. I think the subtitle is how to do product validation when everyone's lying to you. So this is a thing that we see a lot is, you know, let's say you have an idea for whatever it might be, and you go and say, hey, here's my idea. It does X, Y, or Z, or it is X, you know, this thing. What do you think? Is that a good idea or not? Right? And then people are like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Totally great. Right? And the reality is they're lying to you, or they might be lying to you because they're being nice to you. Nobody wants to like burst your bubble or make you feel bad. And nobody's going to tell you the truth. Like, no, that sucks. You shouldn't do that. So what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs is they know they need to go get customer validation for their idea, right? So they go start talking to people, and then they get head faked because all these people are like, yeah, that's great. You should go do that. That's a really good idea. And then they go and spend all this money, time, et cetera. They go drain their retirement account to go build it. And then next thing you know, it didn't work out the way they thought. And so this book is really great because it teaches you how to do customer validation in a way that doesn't allow people to lie to you. And customer validation in the early stages is really, really good. In fact, that's a sort of a requirement for our program. Once we get to a certain phase of the lean canvas and the planning process, then we sort of require that people go out and do a certain amount of customer discovery for their idea. So anyway, that's a good book. Yeah, sorry, were you about to say something? You're muted there.
No, keep going, sorry.
And then the other thing I would recommend as a resource is, I already mentioned it, but it's worth mentioning again, is LeanStack, leanstack.com.
Yeah.
And not only is that a place where you can go and like make a lean canvas, like there's the digital way to do that. But Ash has put together two really fantastic courses. One's called Ideations and one's called Foundations. And I would highly recommend, in fact, for us, again, in our program, we require our teams to go through this. It doesn't take a ton of time, about, you know, call it 4 hours per course. These are just courses for how to do the lean startup methodology and how to get your mindset right. And he does it in a really kind of a neat way. In the Ideations playbook, what you're going to learn is there's kind of two types of entrepreneurs. He calls them Steve and Larry. And and you'll like learn like what kind of entrepreneur are you and which one do you want to be. And so it's just a great course. Even if you're in entrepreneurship programs at Michigan State, I'd recommend you hop on that and do that. It's really good.
Yeah, and those are on the leanstack.com?
Leanstack.com. Yep. Once you sign up, it's free.
Gotcha.
Free of charge. You can go and do the ideations and foundations playbooks, and then jump right in and start doing a Lean Canvas. And while we're there, let me say too, Lean Canvas is such a cool tool to help you like work through your idea. You know, if you're an entrepreneur, chances are you have a bunch of ideas floating around your brain of future businesses, right? And future products. So what I do when I have a new idea is I'll jump on and I'll make a Lean Canvas. So it's just kind of like a brain dump, if you will, to like work through this thing and see if it's going to be a viable business. And everybody's got different motivations, right? And that's one of the first questions we ask is, like, what is your minimum success criteria? And it's kind of a fun question to ask because a lot of people always think about like, well, if I do this right, this is going to be like $1 billion company, right? Versus saying, I always ask entrepreneurs, 2 years from today, you're working like crazy on this idea. What is the minimum success criteria for you to say that was successful and to keep working on it? What does that look like? What's the least amount that you would say that's successful? And it's an honest answer to yourself. And so let's say that your answer is, you know what, if we're not making $1 million, or on track to make $1 million a year with this idea, in 2 years from now, then it's not worth it for me. I'm going to do something else. And so that's really helpful to think about, because then you come back in and say, okay, what's it going to take for us to make that happen? And if your idea is to, make a very specific thing, like let's say you're going to open a cupcake bakery, is that even realistic? Does that line up with, are you going to be able to make $1 million a year selling cupcakes? And so therefore, how is that? It's an alignment of your passion and the realistic ability of that business to produce results for you. At the end of the day, if you're starting a business, making money is necessary. And a lot of people are like, a lot of times when I ask entrepreneurs, what's your minimum success criteria? What do you want to do? Oh, for me, it's not just about making money. I want to do good for the world. And that's great. And you should do good for the world. But at the end of the day, if you're not making money, or the amount of money that you want to make with the time that you're spending on it, then it's not really a business. It's a hobby, or it's something. So you got to figure out how you're going to feed yourself and hopefully your family and all of that, right? So anyway, those are all thoughts that we help entrepreneurs wrestle with and work through. And, those are good things to think about early. Sometimes people just start charging down the path. They get pretty far. They spend a lot of time, invested money, etc. And they get sort of what we call pot committed, where it's like you feel like you can't get out of it, or you can't shut it down or whatever. And then you're kind of stuck in some ways. And that's not why you became an entrepreneur. So anyway, that was a lot. But
that was perfect. Yes, very helpful. So that is all the questions I have for you, but our participants watching, if you have any questions, I'll give you guys a minute to put them in the Q&A section. Yeah. In the meantime, do you listen to any podcasts at all, or are you a big reader?
I am a big reader. I read a lot of books. My favorite book I've read this year is actually by Donald Miller. It's a book called Marketing Made Simple. And this is not necessarily a startup book, but it's really, he's the guy that wrote the book Story Branding, which was his first book, and some of you may have heard of that. Story branding is kind of like a philosophical way to think about your business and how you market it, but Marketing Made Simple is sort of a tactical guide to do so. And he takes you through this process to create like a brand script and how to tell the story of your business. And it's, in my opinion, the best book I've read this year. And I love marketing. That's kind of my thing. So Marketing Made Simple by Donald Miller is a fantastic read.
Very cool. So we have a question. Someone wants to know, what's your favorite or most interesting startup that you have coached to success? If you can disclose. I don't know if they're like agreements.
It's kind of a tough question. In some ways, it's like asking like, which one of your kids is your favorite? So I don't necessarily have a quote unquote favorite, but a team that I'm particularly excited about right now is a company called Ataza. And they actually started in Brazil and moved to Michigan recently, and we just made an investment in their company. Ataza, they developed like a robotic quality inspection system built with AI. So it uses a camera and lights attached to a robotic arm, and it inspects things like surfaces. So when a car comes out of the paint booth at a manufacturing facility, this robot runs around the car, does the inspection, and is better than the human eye at inspecting and much faster, as you can imagine. And so what I like about Ataza is not only is it super cool, right? We're talking about cameras and AI and all that and robotics, but it's got a really strong value proposition because, for an automotive company, they pay, somebody to walk around the car and inspect it all day. And they make a lot of errors. And so not only are they paying a lot for human resources there, but they're also paying a lot because of the margin of error that happens with the human eye. And so again, cool technology, but a great value proposition. It saves manufacturers a lot of money.
Yeah, this is very interesting. We have another question. Do you help grant individuals towards research? If that makes sense. Elizabeth, if you could maybe explain your question further in the chat, that would be awesome. I think what she's saying is, do you help your startups do all of the product research or grant research?
Good question. So yes and no. We're going to expose resources to that entrepreneur. And part of being a good entrepreneur is like being resourceful and going to get stuff done. And so we're going to say, hey, here's a resource to go use, and then it's going to be on them to go make it happen. So we're not going to actually do the work, that kind of work for them. We're going to introduce them to the resources that can help them make that happen. But speaking of that, depends on what the idea is. Okay, so let's say that you're developing a very high-tech, again, disruptive kind of technology. It's going to have patents and it's going to be very intricate. Let's say there's grants for research. That's where the federal programs come in, right? It's called SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research Grant, and STTR. Those are the federal programs. If your idea is not like necessarily high tech, you're not in the lab, researching it, that kind of thing. It's more of a simple product. There's another group that we actually work a lot with called 100K Ideas. And they're actually a Smart Zone incubator located up in Flint. And what they'll do is they'll meet with you and you'll tell them your idea and then, all about it. And then what they'll do is they'll go out and do a full comprehensive market research report for you. So they'll look at things like, what are the competitive products? Are there any competitive patents? What's the global search volume on that? The complexity to make this? Is it patentable? Those kind of things. And then you'll get kind of a nice report at the end of that. They just charge $300 and they'll do the full report for you.
Very cool. So if anyone else has any more questions, sorry. All right, I think that might be all the questions we have for you today. Thank you, Ken, so much for talking with us. The resources you provided, literally, I'm blown away by what Michigan has to offer, and I didn't even know. I'm so excited to use all of them. So thank you so much.
No problem. So Olivia, a question for you. Are you studying entrepreneurship?
I am a marketing and journalism, and then I'm minoring in entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Yes. And so I currently have a startup-ish. It's it's like one of those things where it's my first go at something, and then there might be something better in the future. So. What's
your startup?
Yeah. So I've had a blog for 2 years called Live in Style, but like LIV because my name's Olivia. And over quarantine, I like to sew. So I started thrifting and repurposing clothing, kind of targeting towards like girls my age and the trendy clothing on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my first launch a little over a month ago, and I almost sold out. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
But now I'm finding it very difficult to stay consistent with, now I have school going on. We're no longer in quarantine. So I've got some thinking to do, but yeah.
For sure. Well, good. I encourage you to do a lean canvas on your idea, right?
Yes.
So
yeah, I'm actually, after this call, that's what I'm doing.
yeah, I mean, that's a really good example, right? Where like, it's definitely a passion thing for you, right? You love doing it, and something
Yeah,
that
for sure.
But, some of the best ideas in the world, by the way, are things that like you like and do, solving a problem for yourself, and then maybe other people want that solution too. Sounds like they do, which is awesome. But then you have to look at things like scalability, your time, and how much possible money can you make doing that? Is it worth the time, etc. So those are all things that you have to wrestle with in your canvas. But it's true whether you're, making and selling clothes or software or, a physical product. Those are all the same kind of questions. And so, but I guess the last thing I'll say is the cool part about going through something like the Lean Canvas is, as an entrepreneur, this isn't going to be your first idea, and this isn't going to be your last idea. And so you'll get incrementally better every time at doing this. And so there's no reason to not start and to just go through the process. You're going to learn a lot in the process, and there's no better way to learn than just to go do.
Yeah, I'm excited. Should be a long road, but a fun one. So
yeah, good for you. That's awesome.
Thank you. Well, thank you again. We're so grateful for this conversation and all of your resources. I have one last favor to ask. I was wondering if we could take a Zoom selfie.
Yeah, I've never done a Zoom selfie. How does that work?
Or I'm going to take a photo, and then I like to utilize LinkedIn a lot. So you might see this on LinkedIn later.
Okay.
All right. Ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you. All right, Ken, have a great weekend. I don't know if Koya wants to say a few words before we exit.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here, Ken. I was really excited to hear you said 100K ideas at the end there, because we actually had Peter Deppian, and he used to work there, and
cool.
He founded Commute through there. So yeah, and then I'm not certain, but it kind of sounds like he may have taken advantage of like the free metal prototyping.
Okay, cool.
As they were building their charging hub. And so
nice.
Cool,
awesome
to hear you explain that, and then like being able to hear the example case.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For everyone that's here, we'll be posting these recordings online, so if you want to hear our talk with Peter Deppie as well, definitely do that. I think Ken and Peter are both testament to like how successful you can be going through these structured programs.
Good. And up at Michigan State there, guys, Spartan Innovations. If you haven't been exposed to them, awesome group. They can do a lot to help you. And that's where Michigan Rise, Red Sea Adventures, and all of that. And then LEAP is the other resource up in Lansing that is also really, really great. So,
is there anywhere we can send people to support you?
leanrocketlab.org is our website, and they can go check out our programs and see what we do. And if anybody has questions or an idea you want to kind of work through, etc., go to our website, just click on entrepreneurs, and then you'll see basically just a form that you can fill out there, and that'll be what gets you into our universe, and we'll see what we can do to help you.
Awesome.
Very cool. Awesome.
All right.
Well, have a great weekend. Thank you again.
No problem.
Thank you, everybody that was here as well.
Thanks.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.